You know what? I'm Mr. Beat. Joe Biden will soon be the 46th president in American history. Biden has had some major tragedies in his life. On December 18th, 1972, just weeks after he was elected to the U.S. Senate, his wife, Neilia, was Christmas shopping with their 3 kids, Naomi, Beau, and Hunter, when their vehicle was struck by a truck pulling out of an intersection. Both Neilia and Naomi, who was just 1 year old at the time, died in the accident. Beau and Hunter were injured, but survived. However, on May 30th, 2015, Beau died at the relatively young age of 46 from brain cancer. Perhaps a parent's worst fear is to lose their own children. Joe Biden has had to bury 2 of his 4 children. But throughout American history, it has probably been more common than you think for American presidents to outlive their own children. In this video, let's look at every single son or daughter of every single American president. Some of the president's children were famous. The vast majority of them, however, were not. Heck, they don't even have Wikipedia pages, and we don't even know the names of all of them. The average number of children for all the presidents is 4.1. Now, keep in mind that I am also going to mention some, quote, alleged children throughout this video. Okay, you ready? Let's do this. Here are all the president's children. George Washington. Yeah, he didn't have any biological children. The father of the country couldn't apparently father any children due to possibly getting tuberculosis. Although him getting smallpox as a teenager quite possibly could have made him sterile. However, Washington did have 2 stepchildren after he married his wife Martha, who had them in a previous marriage. Their biological father, Daniel Parke Custis, had died when they were both very young. Washington's stepson, John Parke Custis, lived only to the age of 26, dying probably from dysentery shortly after the surrender of Charles Cornwallis in the American War of Independence. Washington's stepdaughter, Martha Parke Custis, died when she was a teenager. John Adams. John and his wife Abigail had 6 children. 2 of them died very young. Susanna died as a toddler. Elizabeth died during birth. 2 of their other children also lived relatively short lives. Charles died at the age of 30. There was also Abigail, nicknamed Nabby, who died from cancer when she was 48. There was also Thomas, and finally John Quincy Adams, who is the most famous son of John Adams due to a distinguished career in federal politics, and he was also, President Thomas Jefferson. Okay, so nobody really knows how many children Jefferson actually had, but it's probably 14. Possibly 15, I think. Okay, so let's just run through his 6 children with his wife, Martha. First, there was Martha, nicknamed Patsy. There was Mary, nicknamed Polly, who died when she was 25. Jefferson had 4 other children with Martha that all died very young. Jane and Lucy Elizabeth II died as toddlers, and Lucy Elizabeth I and an unnamed son died as babies. Jefferson also had alleged children with Sally Hemings, one of his slaves. Okay, so there's DNA evidence that basically proves it. After Martha died, Sally was pretty much Jefferson's secret lover, yet still as a slave. Some historians claim that Jefferson may have had sexual relations with Hemings when she was as young as 14. What the heck, Jefferson? Anyway, so with Sally, Jefferson had Tom, Harriet I, Eddie, William Beverly, Thania, Harriet II, James Madison, and Eston. Harriet I, Eddie, and Thania all died very young. James Madison. Madison and his wife Dolly had no children together, and he was possibly also sterile. He had a stepson, though, John Payne Todd, who was Dolly's son from a previous marriage. James Monroe. Monroe had 3 kids with his wife Elizabeth, Eliza, James, who died as a toddler, and Maria. Maria was the first kid of a president to get married in the White House in 1820. Yeah, she married her cousin. Pretty common back then. John Quincy Adams, the first son of a president to become a president. Adams had 5 children with his wife, Louisa. George Washington Adams, that is. John Adams II, that is. Charles and Louisa Catherine, and an unnamed son who both died shortly after birth. Charles had a distinguished political career as a U.S. representative and U.S. envoy to the United Kingdom in the Abraham Lincoln administration. Andrew Jackson. Jackson and his wife Rachel had no children together. Jackson was also possibly sterile. They did adopt 3 kids, though. There was Andrew Jackson Jr., who was Rachel's brother's son. Today, Jackson has a horrible reputation among Native Americans for signing the Indian Removal Act, among other things. However, Jackson adopted 2 Native American boys. There was Theodore and Lincoln, who both apparently died young. Andrew and Rachel had saved Lincoln's life when he was a baby, as his parents had died and no one wanted to take care of him. Jackson probably had a soft spot for orphans since he was an orphan himself. Martin Van Buren. Van Buren had 6 children with his wife, Hannah, who died at 35, 18 years before Van Buren became president, actually. The 6 were Abraham, John, Martin, Van Buren Jr., Winfield, Smith, and an unnamed daughter. The unnamed daughter and Winfield both died as babies. William Henry Harrison. Harrison and his wife Anna had 10 children. Elizabeth, nicknamed Betsy, John, Lucy, William Henry Harrison Jr., John Scott, Benjamin, Mary, Carter, Anna, and James. All of them except for James reached adulthood. John Scott grew up to become a U.S. representative and had 13 kids of his own. One of those kids, future President Benjamin Harrison. Yep, John Scott Harrison is the only person in American history to have both a father and a son who were presidents. William Henry Harrison also allegedly had a daughter named Dulcia with one of his slaves. John Tyler. John Tyler had more children than any other president in American history. He had 16 children in total, 8 with his wife Letitia, 7 with his second wife Julia. Wait. I'm pretty good at arithmetic, and that's just 15. Well, Tyler also allegedly had a son with one of his slaves, John William Dungy. All 8 of his kids with Letitia, except for Anne, reached adulthood. His other children with her were Mary, Robert, John Tyler Jr., Letitia, nicknamed Letty, Elizabeth, Alice, and Tazewell. All 7 of Tyler's kids with Julia survived to adulthood. There was David, John Alexander, Julia, Lachlan, Lyon, Roberts, and Margaret Pearl. David was later a U.S. representative. So here's something crazy. John Tyler's son Lyon had a son named Harrison who is still alive today. Holy crap, wowza. James Polk. Polk was also sterile, likely due to an operation where he had urinary stones removed when he was a teenager. Polk and his wife Sarah were the only presidential couple to never have children while together, biologically, adopted, or from a previous marriage. Zachary Taylor. Taylor had 6 children with his wife, Margaret. They had to bury 3 of their children, all 3 dying from malaria. Octavia and Margaret died from malaria when they were babies, and Sarah died from it when she was 21, 3 months after marrying Jefferson Davis. Yeah, the Jefferson Davis, who was the only president of the Confederate States of America. Anyway, Taylor's other 3 kids were Anne, Mary, and Richard. Millard Fillmore. Fillmore had 2 children with his wife Abigail, Millard Powers and Mary. Mary, who served as acting first lady due to Abigail's poor health, was brilliant. She could speak at least 5 languages and played many instruments. Her sudden death from cholera at the young age of 22 particularly devastated Fillmore. Fillmore had no kids with his second wife, Caroline. Franklin Pierce.
The tragic life of a dope-face.
The tragic life of a doughface, indeed. All 3 of his children, with his wife Jane, did not live to see their dad become president. Franklin Pierce Jr. died as a baby. Frank Robert died when he was 4 from typhus. And most tragically of all, Benjamin, aka Benny, died in a horrible train accident just weeks before Pierce was to be inaugurated. Pierce and Jane nearly died from the accident as well and witnessed firsthand as a train car smashed Benny, nearly decapitating him. James Buchanan. Buchanan never married and never had biological children, although he did adopt 2 nieces, Mary and Harriet. Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln had 4 children with his wife Mary, all boys. 3 of them died young. Eddie when he was 3, Willie when he was 11, that was when Lincoln was actually in the White House, by the way, and Tad when he was 18. When Tad was younger, he famously was known as the crazy, impulsive kid running around the White House. He reportedly interrupted important meetings, collected animals and set them loose around the house, and charged visitors to see his dad. Smart kid. Lincoln and Mary's other boy, Robert, lived a long life and notably was the U.S. Secretary of War in the James Garfield administration and later U.S. Minister to the United Kingdom in the Benjamin Harrison administration. Andrew Johnson. Johnson and his wife Eliza had 5 children: Martha, Charles, Mary, Robert, and Andrew Johnson Jr., aka Frank. Ulysses Grant. Grant and his wife Julia had 4 children: Frederick, Ulysses Grant Jr., nicknamed Buck, Ellen, nicknamed Nellie, and Jesse. Frederick ended up being a military governor of a province in the Philippines after the United States occupied it in 1899. Oh, and before that, he was U.S. Minister to Austria-Hungary and the Benjamin Harrison administration. Rutherford Hayes. Hayes and his wife Lucy had 8 children: Sardis Burchard, James, Rutherford Platt, Joseph, George, Fanny, Scott, and Manning. Manning died as a baby, and Joseph and George died as toddlers. James Garfield. Garfield and his wife Lucretia had 7 children, 5 who lived to adulthood. Eliza died when she was 3 and Edward died when he was just 1. There was also Harry, who was a president of a college, James Rudolph, who was a U.S. Secretary of the Interior in the Theodore Roosevelt administration, Mary, Irvin, and Abram, who was an accomplished architect. Chester Arthur. Arthur and his wife Nell had 3 children: William, who died when he was just 2, Chester Arthur II, and Ellen, also nicknamed Nell like her mother. Grover Cleveland. Cleveland was a bachelor until he was 49 and was in his first term when he married the then 21-year-old Frances. Before Frances, back when he was running for president, rumors circulated that he had an illegitimate child named Oscar with a woman named Maria Halpin. In fact, Cleveland's opponents even chanted, "Ma, Ma, where's my paw?" to attack his character. Cleveland acknowledged that Oscar was possibly his, but Maria also alleged that Cleveland had sexually assaulted her, though he was never charged and she may have made this up. Regardless, Cleveland made payments to Maria after Oscar was born, and the public mostly believed Cleveland over Maria. With Frances, Cleveland had 5 children: Ruth, Esther, Marion, Richard, and Frances. All of them lived long lives except Ruth, nicknamed Baby Ruth, who died when she was 12. The makers of the candy bar, Baby Ruth, used to claim they had named it after her, but we now know they really were probably just capitalizing on the star power of Babe Ruth and were just saying they named it after Ruth Cleveland so they didn't have to pay Babe Ruth royalties. Esther Cleveland was the first and only child of a president to be born in the White House. Benjamin Harrison. Yep, I mentioned him earlier. The grandson of William Henry Harrison and son of John Scott Harrison, had 3 children with his wife Caroline and 1 child with his second wife Mary, who was Caroline's niece, by the way. What the heck, Harrison? That is weird. With Caroline, Harrison had Russell, Mary, and an unnamed daughter who died in infancy. Harrison's daughter Mary was acting first lady after Caroline died. After Harrison married Mary, they were so horrified and upset with their father marrying their cousin that they did not attend the wedding and never spoke to him again. With Mary, Harrison had 1 more child, Elizabeth. William McKinley. McKinley and his wife Ida had 2 children, both tragically died very young. Ida McKinley II died when she was a baby, and just 2 years later, Katie died when she was 3. Ida was never able to have children again due to various health problems. Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt's first wife, Alice, died 2 days after giving birth to their daughter, also named Alice. Roosevelt was a mess after her death, giving his daughter to his sister to take care of her until she was 3. By that time, Roosevelt had married Edith, his second wife, and he never talked to Alice about her biological mother. Alice later became one of the most famous children in the White House in American history. The press followed her around, and she was always making headlines by doing controversial stuff. Anyway, with Edith, Roosevelt had 5 more kids: Theodore Roosevelt Jr., or Ted, Kermit, Ethel, Archie, and Quentin. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. served as a member of the New York State Assembly and later as Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Navy, Governor of Puerto Rico, and Governor General of the Philippines. Quentin died in World War I. He remains the only child of a U.S. president to die in combat. William Howard Taft. Taft and his wife Helen had 3 children: Robert, Helen, and Charles. All 3 kind of kicked butt. Charles became the mayor of Cincinnati, Helen was a history professor, and Robert ended up being one of the most influential U.S. senators in American history. Woodrow Wilson. Wilson and his wife Ellen had 3 daughters: Margaret, Jessie, and Eleanor. Eleanor, who was married to William Gibbs McAdoo, the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury in her dad's administration, also wrote a biography about her dad. After Ellen died, Wilson married Edith, but the two had no children together. Warren Harding. Harding and his wife Florence had no children together, although Florence did have a son named Marshall from a previous marriage. Many argued Harding was sterile, but that was before we knew that he likely had a daughter named Elizabeth from an affair with Nan Britton. DNA evidence confirmed it in 2015. Calvin Coolidge.
Calvin Coolidge and his wife Grace, opposites in every way.
Calvin and his wife Grace had 2 sons, John and Calvin Coolidge Jr. On June 30th, 1924, when Coolidge was president, his sons were playing tennis on the White House tennis courts. Coolidge Jr., who was 16 at the time, played barefoot and got a blister on one of his toes. The blister turned into sepsis afterward, and tragically, Jr. died from blood poisoning just over a week later. Herbert Hoover. Hoover and his wife Lou also had 2 sons, Herbert Hoover Jr. and Alan. Franklin Roosevelt. Roosevelt and his wife Eleanor had 6 children: Anna, Jimmy, Franklin Roosevelt Jr., Elliot, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Jr. II, and John. First of all, Franklin Roosevelt Jr. died as an infant. All the other children lived long lives with lots of accomplishments. Here's a weird thing I noticed. All 5 got divorced a lot. Both Elliot and FDR Jr. II got married 5 times. Anyway, Anna went on to become a well-respected author and newspaper editor. All 4 boys served bravely in World War II. All 4 boys except John also got into politics. Elliot was a mayor of Miami Beach, Florida. Both Jimmy and FDR Jr. II were U.S. representatives, among other things. Harry Truman. Truman and his wife Bess had just 1 daughter, Margaret, who was pretty famous due to quite a career in entertainment. Dwight Eisenhower. Eisenhower and his wife Mamie had 2 sons, Dowd Dwight, who died of scarlet fever when he was 3, and John, who also had a distinguished military career. He was also a military historian and U.S. ambassador to Belgium in the Richard Nixon administration. John F. Kennedy. Kennedy and his wife Jacqueline had 4 children. 2 died at or right after birth: an unnamed daughter and Patrick, who died when Kennedy was actually president. There was also Caroline, who is still alive today and served as the U.S. ambassador to Japan in the Barack Obama administration, and John F. Kennedy Jr., who probably could have become president if he really wanted to, although he died at the young age of 38 in a plane crash. Lyndon Johnson. Johnson and his wife Lady Bird had 2 daughters, Linda Bird and Lucy. Both are still alive. Linda Bird is actually the oldest living child of a U.S. president. Johnson also had an alleged son, Stephen, with Madeline Duncan Brown. After Johnson died, Madeline claimed she had an affair with him while he was married for nearly 20 years. Richard Nixon. Nixon and his wife Pat also had 2 daughters, both still alive, Patricia and Julie. Julie married Dwight Eisenhower's grandson, David, who was one of John Eisenhower's sons. Gerald Ford. Ford and his wife Betty had 4 children, Michael, John, Stephen, and Susan, all still alive. John apparently helped start the magazine Outside. Stephen had a career as an actor, appearing in many big movies and TV shows. Susan has had a distinguished career as an author and served as chairwoman of the Betty Ford Clinic, the organization named after her mom that her mom co-founded, aimed at helping folks struggling with substance abuse. Jimmy Carter. Carter and his wife Rosalind, who are both still alive, also have 4 children: Jack, Jimmy Carter III, nicknamed Chip, Donnell, nicknamed Jeff, and Amy. Jack ran for the U.S. Senate in Nevada in 2006 but lost. Most of the Carter kids have kept a low profile in recent years. Ronald Reagan. Reagan had 3 children with his first wife, Jane Wyman. Only one, Michael, is still alive. They actually adopted him, and he had a long career as a political commentator. Reagan and Jane also had Maureen, who died in 2001, and Christine, who died at birth. Reagan had 2 more children with his second wife, Nancy, Patty, and Ronald Prescott, both still alive. Both Patty and Ronald are known for having different political views than their dad. Patty has been vocal criticizing Donald Trump, and Ron, well heck, he's a left-leaning political commentator for MSNBC, for crying out loud. George H.W. Bush. Bush Sr. had 6 children with his wife Barbara. Here's one you may recognize. That's George Walker Bush, who later on served as president himself for a couple terms after serving as the governor of Texas. And here's everybody's favorite Jeb Bush, who was the governor of Florida, but didn't get the Republican nomination running for president in 2016. Bush Sr. and Barbara also had Robin, who tragically died from leukemia when she was 3, and Neil, Marvin, and Doro, who are all still alive and kicking it. Doro is an author who wrote a biography/memoir about her dad. Bill Clinton. Clinton and his wife Hillary have 1 daughter, Chelsea, who is also an author and involved with several different humanitarian organizations. George W. Bush. Bush and his wife Laura have 2 daughters, Barbara and Jenna. Hey, they're my age. They're fraternal twins, the only twins of a president. Like Chelsea Clinton, Barbara has been an activist for various causes and organizations, and Jenna got into journalism. She currently hosts a show on NBC called Today with Hoda and Jenna. Barack Obama. Obama and his wife Michelle also have 2 daughters, Malia and Sasha. Malia recently graduated from college and has a big social media following. Sasha, who is currently attending college, recently went viral on TikTok. Donald Trump. Trump has 5 kids. He had 3 with his first wife, Ivana, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka, who is also my age. How about that? And Eric. There's also Tiffany. Her mom is Marla Maples, Trump's second wife. And finally, there's Barron. His mom is Melania, Trump's 3rd and current wife. Barron has lived in the White House the past 4 years. Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric have all been very active with their father's businesses and political campaigns. Ivanka has also been Trump's senior advisor. Coincidentally, my daughters are also my advisors. So that brings us up to the 46th president, or soon to be 46th president, Joe Biden, who has 2 surviving children. Hunter Biden, who is a controversial figure due to his past struggles with drugs, but more recently, his alleged shady business dealings. But we also have Ashley Biden, who, how about that, is also my age. I'm really biased towards people my own age. Hey, don't forget about Conflict of Nations. Click the link in the description to get 13,000 gold and a 1-month premium subscription absolutely free. That offer only lasts 30 days though, so act fast. Boy, girl, this video was a lot longer than I expected it to be. But that's it. No more kids. That's all of the president's children. All of them, I think. Did I miss any? Are there more kids? Maybe there are. If you think I missed any, let me know in the comments, but please provide DNA evidence to back up your claims. Also, who is your favorite kid? I always enjoy reading the comments, especially the comments that attack my appearance. Look, I look this way because of my parents, okay? Thanks for watching.